Hey everyone, welcome to yet another Happy Accident soap video. This one is I make a really big mess with lace impression mats. And while I do end up with a very beautiful soap, I think anyway, two different kinds of beautiful soap, it isn't what I envisioned. Now you can be assured that I will go back and try again because I'm pretty sure I know, well, I know what I did, but I'm pretty sure I know how to avoid making that happen again. And as you go along and I'll point out my little mistakes, I'm not putting myself down. I'm just pointing them out so you don't make the same mistakes that I do. And just so you have the info, because I didn't put everything up on the screen in text, but I did put the mica colors, but I forgot to put that I'm using Premium Crystal Clear soap base by Crafter's Choice, and I purchased mine from Wholesale Supplies Plus. I'm not an affiliate of any kind. I don't get paid to say that. Not sponsored by them, but it is my favorite soap base, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I love all of their soap bases, or 90% of their soap bases, but this one is my particular favorite, especially when I'm doing an art soap. And this art soap was intended to be kind of a Mother's Day theme ish. And really, the only thing Mother's Day about it is it's just kind of feminine. Um, really, I was drawing a blank this year for doing something Mother's Day. I don't always do something Mother's Day. I know a lot of people like to make something for their mothers, but a lot of times I find people doing very personal things that are specific to their mom. If if I still had my mom here with me, I would probably make something like a piano keyboard with a rose on it because she taught piano for many, many years and her name was Rosemary and she went by Rose many times. So that's just one idea that comes to mind in thinking of making a soap for my mom. But I just thought I'd go with something pretty and feminine and generic because, everybody's mom's different. So I was going to do, well, you know what? I can't even describe it. I was definitely going to do a lace soap using this lace impression mat. And I still end up with a lace soap using this lace impression mat, but it's not at all the idea I had. And I will make that. I will make it because like I said, it's not really specifically a Mother's Day design. It's just pretty. Um, so I will retry the original idea I had, and I'm not going to totally spoil it, but I might spoil it here and there with talking about what I might change, etc. Um, I'll try not to completely spoil it. That's if it actually, hopefully, it will actually work. But I'm pretty sure it will. I know what I did wrong here, and right now, I don't think any of what I've done so far is wrong because I really was in love with the color scheme that I chose. I gave you all of the names of the Mad Mica colors I used. As you know, I am an affiliate, and you will earn me a little bit of a commission if you purchase using my link with no extra cost to you. But I do not use, as many of you have heard, I don't use Mad Micas because I am an affiliate. I'm an affiliate because I love Mad Micas, and I was using them at least a couple of years before I even applied for uh, an affiliate, an affiliation. There we go. That's the word. So let me get in there and just say I'm using the Premium Crystal Clear because I was hoping for um, a clear background. Because of the way this ends up, I probably could have used something else because it doesn't come out perfectly clear. Which I get away with just fine, I think, in the way it comes out. Um, but in the original idea, I think I would have been pretty upset if I had. I do think part of that is to blame is the fragrance. Now, I have used this fragrance oil before, and it did fine for me. But as you see there, when I'm stirring a little bit in, and I'm using it at basically 1%, it gets just a little yellow, just a little bit. And then, of course, I completely blow that out of the water by some other issues you'll see as we go along. So, but parts of it remain mostly clear. And like I say, within the design that I end up with, it works just fine. I really had fun playing with these colors. This one right here, this Daydream blue was my first time using that one. I bought it when it was released as one of their lab colors from Mad Micas, and I absolutely fell in love with it. It's so sparkly and so pretty. Anyway, enough of that. The impression mat. This is my first time using this large of an impression mat, and this type. So I had what I consider, okay, now you're going to see it yellow. It was yellow to me because I'm looking at a really small picture and I'm using a yellow spatula. Please don't forget the color of your spatula may reflect into your clear soap as you're stirring it. It really can fool you, and fooled me again. So, but it will get a little more yellow as you see here as I'm stirring the fragrance in. It's not horribly yellow, but it's yellow enough that in the second half of this video, when I go to pour the loaf soap, this is a loaf soap that I'm pouring, I end up adding a little bit of blue. I actually end up adding a little too much blue. It does balance it out and it works fine in the soap. But yeah, if we're going to be perfectly clear, I should have gotten out a toothpick, but I was lazy and I didn't. So you'll see that in this part of the video, or the soap design, it doesn't matter so much if it's perfectly clear because I'm using micas in them. And it's going to be a colored portion. I'm making some embeds that I plan to use in my loaf soap. Just a side note here while I'm stirring these gorgeous colors. You may hear, I've got my windows open because it's such a beautiful day. So you might hear an occasional birdie, maybe a car from way out on the highway. They're kind of noisy with the windows open. Not super noisy, but it might pick up on the microphone. The birdies would be much more pleasant, I'm sure. They're springing away for sure as I'm filming in the spring. So I am kind of just trying to fill these up evenly. I do fill them up too much. And I don't waste the soap. I promise you, I always use my scraps and leftovers. But as a result of filling these too much, and it is better to have too much than too little when you're in the middle of a pour, for sure. But it leaves me shy on the clear end of things as I'm going to fill the mold, because some of this won't be used in the soap. And I'm not sure if you could see my my scale, but I used about 45 ounces total, or 44.5, something like that. And my mold holds 42, about 42. So I was trying to anticipate, you have loss here and there for different reasons, and I always try to go a little on the side of extra rather than, last minute panic and having to melt clear. Well, spoiler alert, last minute I panic and melt more clear because I've used some of the soap that I'd weighed out in these little cups and did not finish using it. I will fairly soon make a soap using those. I let it set up in the cup because these little flexible silicone cups, you can just kind of pop out a little puck, a little soap puck. And they're, because of what I'm doing with them for these embeds, I'm coloring them fairly strongly. That's intentional because you see it's a very thin embed that I'm creating. And I ended up scraping a little off. I don't think this was the right method to do for this for what I wanted. Um, if you want to get a clue for what I think I should do, for what I know I should do, and what will work in the future, um, you might want to go back and watch my flurries snowflake video if you have not. And I will probably link that as my end cap, my little end cap probably isn't the right word, but my end link for a video to watch next, because I really think the technique in there will be relevant as far as how I go forward in the future with trying to actually create the soap I wanted in my head. Um, sometimes you have an idea for a soap and it doesn't turn out the exact way you pictured. And that it can happen pretty frequently. But now I know what to do that. So I improvise quite a bit in here. And if you've known me for a while, you'll notice I end up improvising quite a lot because things don't always turn out in soap the way you want. And so you learn from it and you try again. And I'm hoping that through my tutorials, I can help save you some of the pain of having a soap not turn out like you want. So I try to give fairly thorough instructions, um, whether that's visual, written, or me blabbering on about it, um, because I want you to have a chance to avoid some of my mistakes. So I show pretty much all of my mistakes to you, um, so that you can learn from that and not have to make as many soaps to achieve the look you want. Um, the look I want, that I'm really going for in this, is related to a soap I've done in my past. Not really. It's not really related to the flurries. With the windows being open and it being spring, I'm pretty sure I'm inhaling a bit of pollen. So excuse me if I'm choking a little bit. I'm not going to give you the soap I was actually trying to emulate because that's too much of a spoiler, I think. And so, watching the flurries for the technique, and then just wait because I am going to do the one I want. Um, but hopefully through this you can learn, what are the problems, what are the issues with using a lace or any kind of really not embed, impression mat this way. This is not the way that you normally use an impression mat, and I'm well aware of that. So keep that in mind. You don't need to school me on it. I know how you normally use that, and for those who don't, it would mean you normally lay the mat down on the inside of your mold. Well, for soap, because these are actually made for fondant and frosting and cake decorating and stuff like that. And that I can't really tell you how to use because I am not a cake decorator. I'm not a cook. I'm not a baker. I am not any of those things. I can't pipe to save my life. So you will not be seeing me or you will not see me doing cupcakes and cute little molds, not molds, cupcakes. That's it. Cupcakes. Unless there is and I know there are molds that you can just kind of pre-shape that way, but don't ever expect me to pipe frosting because it's not going to happen. So the way you would use these normally for soap, and people use them in cold process soap as well as melt and pour, and you kind of line your mold with the impression mat. Now, you can buy impression mats that are specific sizes, and you can, you can actually get one that fits just on the bottom. I've seen people put them on the top. I feel like that's much harder with melt and pour because it has to be mostly set up. You'd have to put a little extra layer on, and then you'd have to really make sure not to get bubbles because if you're laying it upside down, you might have a little bit of trouble avoiding bubbles at the top. So as you put it down onto that, I mean, you could spray it with alcohol fairly well and cross your fingers and go for it. But the way will be using these also in the future is I do want to cut some off and make one specifically kind of designed for my mold, like, cut it to size. But while it was still large, I wanted to try some things like this because they're fun. And another thing you can do is wrap it all the way in. So you could cut it the you could cut it the length of your mold and then drape it down in. Let's see. Koala Soaps, I believe, has a couple of videos on that using impression mats in soap, and she does a fabulous job of that. I'm not sure if the Dancing Soap Dish has any out there using an impression mat, but I wouldn't be surprised. She uses so many clever tricks to create designs. So you might want to check her out as well. And I will be experimenting with these a lot. So keep checking back in with me to see how I avoid this big, nasty mess you see me pulling up here. As you may or may not have noticed, the first ones I pulled up, and I really highly recommend you pulling up by kind of peeling back the mold rather than the soap. I know it looks like, because I am kind of rolling that soap up, but it's going to be more helpful if you pull or at least kind of push up from underneath, as you see me doing here, and create more of a bend in the impression mat than in the soap. Those last two there, the pink and the purple, I mean, this is just chunks, people. I do not end up with lace. Well, I do. It's chunks of lace. It's not a nice sheet. The first two were a sheet that kind of was tattered. And in my opinion, when I was like, I'm fine with that. That will work for the design I want. But when I got to the purple and the pink chunking up like that, I knew what I'd done wrong, and I know what I need to do to fix it. So it's too late really for me on this one, although I do a little bit better on this one, but still not the right idea for the look I wanted. But obviously you're going to get, it's going to be easier to peel up if it's a little thicker. I didn't want it to be opaque. So there's a couple of different ways you can achieve less opaque, but a thicker design, or thicker sheet to get the impression and still be able to pull it up. One of those would be to use less mica and have it not be such an intense color. And the other way I'm going to save, because the other way I'll see if, y'all might be able to guess it, because I did really basically give you the info to go look up in my Flurries video, because that's when I share pretty much one of my favorite tips ever. And guess who didn't think to use it on this? Oh, that would be me. I really did think of it way early on when I first decided I wanted to do this and actually when I first bought the impression mats. But it just kind of slipped my mind. And so I didn't do it. But this piece, you might notice, comes off a lot better because it is a little bit thicker. It isn't perfect. Like I said, I was okay with them not coming out perfectly because it would work fine for the soap. When I cut down the center like that, just to let you know, I'm not cutting my mat. I'm not even scratching it. It's I'm basically just kind of scoring the soap, and that works enough because this layer is so thin. It works enough to kind of break it apart into two halves. I broke it into two halves for a couple of reasons. One, it is a heck of a lot easier to get it off, even when you're, struggling anyway. But it also kind of divided the colors a little bit. And I did want different sheets of color. And as you see me here, it looks like I'm totally ripping them apart. Well, I am, but I'm ripping apart the ends because I want them shorter length, and that's all I'm doing. I do end up using those pieces that you see extra. I end up with a few extra pieces, which of course, if you know me, they'll be used in something. But here I'm ripping them instead of cutting them because I really preferred to have more organic edges. But that doesn't matter in a minute because you'll see I destroy the whole thing by pouring my soap too hot and not waiting long enough to let it cool. It kind of was. I feel like I was cheated a little because, well, really not. I guess it showed me that it was cool for what I tend to pour, the temperature I tend to pour for my smaller soaps, like my marbling and um, my soaps that kind of the fluid layer soaps. But it's been a while since I have done a loaf soap of this style, and my brain had the wrong temperature in my head, so that was on me. Here comes too much blue. I'm hoping the video's caught up to this because sometimes it gets a little off, but it does take the yellow out, but it kind of ends up being a little mint green. It's not really enough to affect a whole lot. It doesn't look mint green by the time it's done. It just looks a little, it just doesn't look super clear. But like I said, I believe the fragrance oil would have done that whether I added the blue or not. Was either going to be a little toward the yellow side or a little bluish or a little green. But it just looks a little dark, kind of. You'll see it in the end, of course. But I am stirring and stirring. I cut out some of the stirring I did, both to make sure that that fragrance oil is incorporated in well enough and to ensure that it was cool enough, but it really wasn't. So I am spritzing with alcohol both for cooling, the purposes of cooling the liquid soap and for releasing some of the bubbles. Sometimes if you stir, spritz, that helps some of the bubbles at the bottom kind of rise to the top and release when you spray it, because you can only really reach the top bubbles from spritzing. But I have a tip for you. I told this to somebody in a comment, I believe, that one of the tips is if you have a bunch of bubbles all throughout, pop it in the microwave for like 10 seconds, maybe 15, and you should get like some bubbles that just they come up to the center top. Just do really small increments in the microwave for that purpose, and then you can spritz them and they go away. That works, I'd say, about 95% of the time. Very, very small little 10-second increments. If I said 10 minutes, I was wrong. So I don't know how caught up this thing is, but you'll see pretty much right away that it was too hot. And I knew it right away. And instead of just kind of waiting and coming back when it was cooler, that would have formed a skin over the top and a lot of bubbles. So instead, I cram as many as I can in at once because, again, the more embeds, and I sprayed a lot too, as you see. The embeds will cool it as you put them in. But if this is at a point where it was just too much, it was too much heat for these very, very thin embeds. I also haven't used lace like this with the real fine little air holes. I didn't even think about that as being way more susceptible to melting, and I should have. That was on me. So, but I keep shoving them in to try to slow down the process of the melting and cool it off a little bit. And it does get me some extremely unique looks, just not anything like what I had in mind. So I shove the little pink ones there. I obviously didn't have enough soap because I poured out too much for color. So you'll see me pouring what's there. I melted. I didn't really show me cutting it and melting it and stirring it because I figured you know how to do that by now. If you don't, 30-second increments at the most. For such a small amount, I did them more at 15 seconds at a time. I think the first one I did 30 seconds. But anyway, and then you had to get it hot enough to melt, but then have it cool enough to not melt everything else. So that's tricky. And I did melt some of the top, but not everything. definitely mostly not lace now. It's mostly colors. I was kind of hoping for like a swirl. I was kind of hoping, okay, well, if they're going to melt, maybe at least they'll kind of stay in place a little and swirl. It's not quite the effect I get, as you'll see when it's unmolded. I'm using the knife to try to kind of cut through a little bit because it did. I shoved all those embeds in and it did set up fast. It just set up after everything melted. So it wasn't fully set up. So I wanted to see if some of that clear would go down below. That's why I cut through a little bit of that top layer that had set up. And then I come back and I let it cool a little bit. I pour this a little bit cooler. You see, I poured it in stages. I poured it and then stirred again and let it set up. Not set up, let it cool off. And then I'm hoping for this part to remain a little bit clear. And I top it with some little just pieces. These weren't cut to size. These weren't trimmed up nice and pretty. They are just little ripped up pieces of lace, soap lace. And it ends up with a cool effect. I believe I like the way it came out. The top of it was gorgeous to me. And you'll see this in a second if you're not already seeing it now. But it's now it's a little bit of a waiting game. I have no idea, of course, what really is going on the inside. I don't know how much these have melted. I don't know how much they have spread throughout it. I'm just crossing every finger and hoping and praying and maybe cursing a little bit that something nice will come out of this. I could always rebatch if I didn't like it. And I may still come back with a couple of them and rebatch a little bit because I want to use up the scraps I have, and I think I might want to add in one of the pieces I end up with at the end. So cool from the bottom. I mean, that is super neat. I like it anyway. I don't know at this point like what it's going to look like when I cut through. I have no idea, but I love the way the bottom came out. It is still a little bit gelatinous because I definitely unmolded it too soon. Kind of intentionally, because again, this was a very intense video and pour, and I was exhausted. By the end, when I'm holding up the soaps to the camera so you can get a good look at them, my back is so bad I can almost not stand and I could almost not do it. You'll see, watch for the end, because when I'm pulling them up to the camera, that's all you get. I don't come in with the pictures from a light box this time. I just didn't have the energy to do it. And so by the way, if you cut and your soap is a little too sticky, don't forget to spray it. Spray your blade of your cutter or your knife or whatever, and spray the soap, and that helps it to cut more smoothly and not get too sticky and all that fun stuff. So it helps it glide. Someday I'm going to do a video just on what alcohol does for soap makers. So look forward to that one in your future when I can figure out how to piece it together. But I thought that was kind of cool. To me, now I feel like that the lace bits that melted kind of melted in these odd little layers. They still stayed kind of like layers. And to me, it looked a little bit like a gemstone. So like maybe a slab of gemstone layers. That's what I'm kind of seeing when rocks form and create all kinds of layers. You can't really see it as far from as far away as that is, at least for me. I'm looking at a small picture. But up close, you'll definitely see the layers, and I want you to look for that in the close-ups. And realize that you'll see me. I want you to see how many times I almost drop these. They're slippery because I do spray them with alcohol so that you can see the clarity as best as possible on camera, because it doesn't always show up the way they truly look. And so I always spritz with alcohol. It does make them slippery. Most of the time I can hang on to that. But I was so tired and my back was so sore by the end of this. I almost dropped them more than one time. So just watch for that fun coordination as you see me doing that. I did do 3 bars from Uncle Andy's, and then I had another idea. I flipped it around because the backside of the soap was a little bit more set up than in the middle. Of course, the middle is the last to set up. So that gave me a little bit more wiggle room with allowing both of those ends to be exposed to the air and cool off a little bit as I'm adjusting things and moving things around. Every little second helps for sure when you're looking at doing these. It wasn't so squishy that it was pouring out. I have had that happen, but that's another story for another day because it was a weird experience and not a normal happening. But I have had soap pour out of the center before. Um, so I'm looking at this. I'm hoping some of you might guess what I'm doing because this is the cut I usually do when I'm creating my soap chunks. I mean, my soap crystal chunks. And it was a weird decision. That's why you may have seen me hemming and hawing around a little bit about it. But because crystals don't have lace, even the ones called lace agate and blue lace agate, crazy lace agate, all those, it doesn't really look like lace. It gives kind of an impression of it, but it certainly doesn't look like this. Um, but I wanted to try it, and I thought, um, if worst comes to worst, if I don't like it, I could always slice off the lace on top. But and I still may in one of them just to see what happens, but I did not do that here because as you might see, I like the way they look when it came out, and I thought of, how do I uh name this, or what do I call this? So I just had an image in my head of crystals and lace, and I think they look very cool together. I used to keep some of my crystal collection on a little lace doily, and so I'm calling it crystals and lace. Um, the slices can look like crystal too, kind of like crystal slabs, and then the ones that I specifically cut to look like crystals do look like crystals, but with lace on top. As I will probably go back and trim the top of them just a little. You'll see when I get to the faceting of those that I kind of leave that alone. I don't really bevel the top as much as I normally do. But I may go back and do that in the future. If so, you will see pictures of it somewhere. So make sure to check my community posts and my Facebook posts and all those fun things, Instagram. Um, all I'm doing here, I just kind of wanted to decorate the front with a little lace applique, soap lace applique. I do go back later and put a little bit of hot soap under it so it sticks. It's only going to stick here enough to get close ups. And I was too tired to do that then. So I just did it this way, and because it was still a little warm, it stuck enough for me to pick them up without them falling off. Um, so that's what I did. I took a little bit of the lace from the impression mold that I'd made, and I just traced around the flower. I mean, it gives you the lines, and I just went with my little knife very gently and made sure I didn't cut through to my mat, my silicone mat that I use for soap making. It's just a crafting silicone mat. They're fabulous to craft on, especially for soap. I only use it for soap. If I did other crafts now, I have in the past, but I'm not doing any now. If I did any now, I'd get each craft a separate one so I'm not contaminating it with something else like clay or I don't know what else. But I'm not doing that. So these are all soap. And I only do this little applique design to 2 of them because I wanted to leave one plain. That may be the one that I go back and if I decide to rebatch one to make some extra crystals, I may do that, or I may pull one of the crystals. I haven't decided. As you'll see, as I'm faceting these crystals, I always do the corners first. Um, and the little bits that I'm cutting off are so pretty. So that's one of the reasons that made me want to soon do a rebatch of something. If it's just the scraps, fine. But I may, like I say, I may cut up one of these bars because they look really pretty chopped up. Um, I don't bring that up close so you can't see, but I will bring the crystals up close so you can get an idea of what little shards of that same soap looks like up close, because it looks really cool in my opinion. I do cut, like I say, at the corners and cutting outward from the corners. And then I kind of come back and cut inward at the bottom a little bit. So I'm faceting it two ways on these. I do that with most of my crystals. I feel like I did it a little bit more on these because I wanted to focus on leaving that lace alone for now. Like I said, I think I'll go back and bevel because the edge of the lace looks a little funny to me. Doesn't look horrible. It just looks a little too sharp there. I just want to maybe even trim off like a 16th of an inch if I can do it, or an eighth of an inch, the tiniest amount possible, or even just bevel the lace itself if that's possible. I don't know. We'll find out, and you'll find out too if you see my updates with this. But when I get to picking these up and showing them up close, I think you'll be shocked how beautiful they are as a crystal. Even if you don't like the lace on top, I think it looks kind of cool. If you don't like that, look at the crystal itself, because I think it came out beautiful. Now here, I'm in the up close now. Yes, I am. I think it still looks like a gemstone. It looks like a slab of gemstone with a lace applique on top, which is kind of weird, but that's what happens when you panic and need to go with a different design than you originally planned for. I think the top looks on each one looks absolutely stunning. Weird lace applique type thing, but it's pretty. It's a pretty soap. And if I didn't even have a name for it and call it crystals and lace, I still think it'd be a pretty soap. The layering, I think, looks very much like a stone, except where the lace shows through, which is just a little. There's like maybe two spaces where you can kind of see the lace pattern, but you can definitely see a layering pattern, and it definitely reminds me of stones, crystals, gemstones, whatever you want to call them. I know they all have technically different names, but I think it came out stunning. That one almost looks like a swirl. Some of it swirled as it was melting. Some of the lace embeds were melting very rapidly, and they made kind of some streaks and some little curls here and there. So it's kind of a cross between a swirl and a layer thing. But it's pretty. The color, like I said before, I feel like the colors were spot on with what I wanted. Um, when I remake this and try to do my original idea, I may change the color scheme, not because I don't like it, because obviously I love it. I've mentioned it at least twice now. But I just to not be repetitive, I may change it up at least a little bit. I don't know what colors I'll use, but I would like, maybe you tell me a couple of things in the comments if any of this strikes you as something you would like to engage with, and let me know. I'd like to know what color scheme you would use with a soap like this, regardless of whether or not it turned out like you like it or not. And let me know if you prefer the look of the bars here with the lace appliques, or when I get to pulling them up, if you like the look of the crystal soaps. And then I would also like to know if you like the lace on the top of the crystals. Um, you'll Hopefully you'll get to see kind of what that looks like, because I'm showing them up close here. And let me know what you think. I thought it was kind of pretty. Like I said, I'm going to trim it just a little because you see kind of the flatness of it at the edges. It's a little harsh, and I'll probably trim just a tiniest amount off of that. But what do you think? Is that just too weird to have lace on your crystal? Um, I think outside of the box. Sometimes what I like is a little weirder than what somebody else might like. But I think they came out to be pretty soaps anyway. Let me know maybe what you might have done if you were doing a soap like this and they started melting. I did kind of have to fight the urge to just scrap it all. um, before I cut it. I mean, when I was putting them in and they started melting, I almost freaked out, but then I didn't. So I feel like I saved it in that way. I could have thrown in some clear chunks of soap into the loaf mold with the hot soap, and those would have cooled it a little bit faster. And had I thought of that ahead of time, if I'd known it ahead of time, or if I'd thought to prepare that, I might have done it. I don't know why, but they rose to the top. I'm really not sure why that happens, but I did notice that in another soap I did using kind of scraps that way. Sometimes they're just going to float to the top. And if I'd realized it was doing that, I might have tried to shove it down a little more. In a couple of the other soaps I've made, like I made one intentionally, rainbow space crystals or something. I have a video of it, neon rainbow space crystals, where I intentionally put really thin sheets in at a hot temperature because I wanted them to melt kind of like this. And that turned out really super cool. But they also floated so that the majority, and I think I poured it a little hotter, so I got a little bit more melting action going. But the majority was on the top like this, and I just don't know why that happens. If any of you do know, let me know in the comments. There's another thing you can comment on. I do enjoy engaging with you. You've sent me some fabulous questions. I think coming up, I can't say soon because, gosh, my schedule is just crazy. But eventually, I'm going to gather some of those questions that I feel like others might benefit from and do it as a Q&A like I did before. And then I'll ask you for to add other questions to the videos coming up before it, so you can ask questions that you don't think have been asked before. Keep in mind, if it's been repeated over and over and over again, I may not name all of your names and read it when 18 people have asked the same questions. I'm not going to list all of your names. So I'm sorry about that, but I'll probably, the popular questions I will answer, and I'll just say this was a popular question and then say it. And maybe I'll say the name of the person who last asked it, or who asked it on the video where I'm specifically asking you to put your questions in there. See, I love that layering. I think that's so pretty, and I really feel like even though the bottom isn't super clear, it's clear enough. I mean, some of that non-clarity isn't from the fragrance oil and isn't from the extra blue I added. I think the blue is a good choice just because it's not yellow, so there's that. But the mica melting in there, and I believe the white one, because I put that in first, melted first and was the hottest one. So I think that's mostly what you see is that white mica and the Sparkle Me or Sparkle Plenty, which I adore, by the way. And I think kind of saved the look of that melted part because I don't know if the camera shows it, but it's quite sparkly where it is melted, where it is not quite clear. But see right there, that definitely looks like gemstone layers to me. Okay, so I'm pulling up toward rounding around near the very end. So here's your chance. Which do you like better? And I don't care which specific, bar you like, but do you like the bar better? You like the crystal better? No lace? Yes lace? Bevel it? Don't bevel it? Tell me your thoughts. I like to hear what you do. It may not influence what I ever do, but here I am losing the soap. See, this is where my back is just giving out because holding them up high really starts hurting. But anyway, I appreciate hearing about what you do with your soaps, and I appreciate you spending this much time with me to see my mistakes, how not to make them, how not to use an impression mat. And I enjoy working with you and helping you. Thank you so much for all of your time, and I'll see you soon. Thank you so much. Bye.